At exactly 6:10 every morning, Nai was already awake. Not because she wanted to be, because poverty does not snooze. She studied before sunrise. Math problems first, then literature, then vocabulary. At 7:30, she walked to school. At 3:15, she walked straight to the fish market. Every day. No excuses. No breaks. Her classmates went home to rest. Nai went home to work. Nai was not the loudest student. She was not the most popular. But teachers noticed something strange about her. Languages came easily. When the English teacher introduced new words, Nai used them in full sentences the same day. When a transfer student from Thailand struggled in class, Nai picked up basic Thai phrases within weeks. Not because she had lessons. Because she listened carefully. Language, to her, was rhythm, patterns, sound connected to meaning. While other students memorized, Nai absorbed. She borrowed language books from the public library. Old, torn, sometimes missing pages. Spanish, Mandarin, Arabic, French. She practiced pronunciation while cleaning fish. She repeated verbs while carrying ice. She whispered new phrases while walking home at night. Her mother once asked, tired hands washing scales from her apron, "Why do you push yourself like this?" Nai answered simply, "Because one day, I don't want to smell like fish." There was no shame in the market, but there was limitation, and Nai could see beyond it. By 4 p.m., she stood behind the stall. The smell hit hard every day. Salt, blood, ice, metal. Her hands grew rough from knives and cold water. She calculated prices quickly. Converted currency, when sailors paid in foreign cash. That's how it started. A fisherman once shouted in broken English. A tourist argued in Spanish. A trader from Dubai negotiated in Arabic. Nai stepped in. Translated. Negotiated. Solved the argument. Her uncles stared at her. "Where did you learn that?" She shrugged. "Books." By 18, she could hold conversations in 6 languages. By 22, she could speak 14. Not perfectly polished, but clear, accurate, sharp. After university, scholarship earned through grades and pure stubborn effort, Nai did not land a glamorous job. She became an office janitor in a logistics firm. Temporary contract. Low pay. She moped the floor, cleaned the glass of high-rise building overlooking the city, made tea sometimes. But she noticed something quickly. This company dealt with international shipping. Contracts in different languages moved across desks every hour. And the translator? She made mistakes. Expensive ones. Small wording errors. Numbers slightly off. Clauses softened during meeting. The company blamed stress. Nai didn't. Because mistakes have patterns. And this had a pattern. She had noticed it from coming in to serve coffee or to clean up mess during meetings. The boardroom was tense that afternoon. Big deal. Foreign investors. Live translation happening. Nai was there only to serve tea and coffee and pick up the old cups. She stood near the wall. Invisible. As usual. The translator read aloud from the Mandarin contract. Nai's head snapped up. One phrase. One word. Changed liability from shared to exclusive. That single word meant millions in risk. She froze. Her heart pounded. Not her position. Not her responsibility. But she knew. And she could not unknow it. The investors nodded. Junwoo sat at the head of the table unaware of the mistakes. Calm. Listening. Watching. Nai stepped forward before she could overthink it. "Excuse me." Every head turned. The translator stiffened. Nai swallowed. "In Clause 7, she said carefully, the term used implies sole responsibility, not shared. The original English version states joint liability." Silence. The air tightened. The translator's face strained. "That's incorrect," the translator snapped. Nai didn't argue emotionally. She walked to the screen. Pointed. Explained the grammar structure. Explained the legal implication. Clear. Precise. Confident. One of the investors quickly grew pale because they knew what was going on. The translator had been secretly paid to omit and put in words that would cost our company. Then looked up slowly. "She is correct." The room shifted. The deal paused. Corrections were made. Millions saved. Maybe more. Junwoo had not spoken yet. He was watching her. After the boardroom correction, everything changed, but not all at once. The former translator was quietly removed. There was no public scandal. No shouting. Just a quiet restructuring email sent on a Monday morning. By Friday, Nai was sitting at a new desk. The plaque read, "Junior Translator, International Contracts." The same building. The same glass walls. But the air felt different. People looked at her now. Not as the girl who made coffee. Not as the cleaner who wiped tables. They looked at her as someone who had spoken and been right. But Nai did not change her routine. She still arrived early. She still reviewed documents twice. She still visited the fish market on Sundays. Her mother refused to stop working. "I don't know how to rest," her mother said. So Nai helped. Not because she had to. Because she remembered. Ice against metal. Salt in the air. Men shouting prices. That place had built her discipline. She would never pretend it didn't exist. 3 months into her new role, Junwoo called her into his office. "You stay late often," he said. "Yes." "You walk home." Yes. He slid a small folder across the desk. Inside was a car key. Company vehicle. Not flashy. Simple. Black. Reliable. For security and convenience, he said evenly. She looked at it, then back at him. Thank you, she said carefully. But I prefer walking. He studied her. Why? It reminds me where I came from. Silence. Walking is not weakness, she added. It keeps me grounded. He did not argue. He simply nodded. Offer stands. She left the key on the desk and walked home that night. Over the next 2 years, Nye became known for one thing: accuracy. She never guessed. If she wasn't sure, she researched. If a clause felt unclear, she asked. She didn't try to impress. She tried to be correct. Soon executives began asking, has Nye reviewed this? Wait for Nye's confirmation. Not because she was loud, because she was thorough. She trained herself in legal terminology, studied trade law at night, watched recorded negotiations to understand tone, not just words. She learned something important. Translation was not about language. It was about responsibility. One wrong word could shift power. And she respected power. The attraction between her and Junwoo did not explode. It grew quietly, in meetings where their eyes met after a successful negotiation, in moments when he paused and asked, your opinion? In small acknowledgements. You were right. Good catch. Well done. He never praised her publicly in dramatic ways. He respected her privately. That mattered more. She did not feel owned. She felt valued. One evening, nearly a year later, she stayed past midnight finishing a contract in Portuguese. When she stepped outside, the streets were nearly empty. Cold wind. Long shadows. She walked 2 blocks before noticing a car slowing beside her. Not threatening, just watching. It drove off. But the message was clear. Success attracts attention. The next morning, she walked into his office. The car, she said simply. If the offer still stands. He didn't smile, but something softened in his expression. It does. This time, she took the key. Not because she had changed. Because she had grown. Keeping things simple did not mean refusing support. It meant choosing wisely. Years passed. The company expanded into new regions. More languages. More contracts. More complexity. Nye built a small translation team. She trained them personally. You don't translate words, she would say. You translate consequences. She insisted on 3 rules. Read twice. Assume nothing. Ask when unsure. She mentored young employees from humble backgrounds. She noticed the quiet ones. The invisible ones. Because she had been one. Her reputation spread. Not flashy. Not dramatic. Reliable. When a major international merger happened, she led the translation strategy across 6 languages. Flawless execution. The board took notice. Months later, she was offered partnership. Not symbolic. Equity. Ownership. She read the contract twice before signing. He watched her as she did. You still check every detail, he said. Yes. You don't trust easily. I verify. He nodded. That's why you're here. The night she signed her partnership agreement, they stood on the rooftop. City lights below. Wind calm. You built this, he said quietly. No, she replied. We did. It was the first time she had included him like that. He looked at her carefully. You changed this company. You gave me space to speak. Silence. Then he said it. Not dramatically. Not urgently. I respect you. She smiled slightly. That matters more. Another pause. And I love you, he added. Simple. Steady. She didn't rush. She stepped closer. I love you too. There were no storms. No threats. No chaos. Just 2 people who had worked hard and chosen each other. Money changed her life, but it did not change her values. One Sunday, standing at the edge of the fish market, she noticed children arguing in broken English with tourists. Struggling. Just like she once had. An idea formed quietly. Months later, a small building opened 3 streets from the market. A sign outside read, Open Language Center. No flashy branding. Just clear words. Classes were free. English. Mandarin. Spanish. Arabic. Anyone could attend. Children. Fishermen. Vendors. Her mother cried the first day she walked in and saw 20 students repeating phrases together. You came back, her mother whispered. I never left, Nye replied. She taught in the evenings. After work. Not because she needed more success. Because she remembered. She told her students. Language is not about sounding smart. It is about expanding your world. She showed them how to listen for patterns. How to practice without fear. How to speak even when nervous. Just like she had done in that boardroom years ago. One afternoon, a small girl stayed behind after class. Teacher, she asked shyly, were you always rich? Nye laughed softly. No. Then how? Nye looked toward the fish market. Smelled salt in the air. I worked. I studied. I paid attention. And when it was time to speak, I did. The girl nodded seriously, as if storing the answer for later. Nye did not become powerful overnight. She became powerful through discipline, observation, courage, consistency. She did not fall in love with a powerful man. She fell in love while becoming powerful herself. She did not escape the fish market. She expanded beyond it. And in the end, the girl who once cleaned glass tables and made coffee for meetings owned part of the building. But she still woke up early, still read carefully, still believed that small corrections can change entire futures. Years later, the mornings were quieter. The chaos of crisis calls at 2 a.m., the tense negotiations, the whispered strategies in glass boardrooms, all of it had softened into something steadier. The fish market still woke before dawn. And so did Nye. But now, she woke in a sunlit bedroom overlooking the harbor, beside the man who once sat across from her in silence, testing her translations word by word before he learned to trust her heart. Junwoo stirred as the early breeze slipped through the curtains. "You're thinking again," he murmured without opening his eyes. Nye smiled. "It's graduation day." That got him up. They dressed simply, as they always preferred. Nye still chose modest elegance over extravagance. Junwoo still wore tailored restraint. Success had changed their reach, not their rhythm. By 9 o'clock, the courtyard of the Nye Language Initiative was alive with color. Children from the fish market, the same narrow alleys she once hurried through after school, stood in pressed uniforms, clutching certificates in trembling hands. Parents wiped tears with the backs of work-worn fingers. A banner stretched across the small stage. "Fluency is freedom." The building itself stood only 2 streets away from the stall where Nye once cleaned fish after school without fail. The scent of salt water still drifted in when the wind turned. She had insisted on that. "Never forget where the hunger sharpened you," she used to say. The school began with 5 students on plastic chairs. It now trained hundreds each year, children, single mothers, dock workers, teenagers who thought their dreams were too expensive to speak aloud. Classes in 14 languages. Scholarships funded quietly by a company partnership most people still didn't fully understand. Because while Nye had become partner in Junwoo's firm, training translators, building international bridges, turning language into leverage, she had never advertised her generosity. She remembered too clearly what it felt like to count coins. The ceremony began. One by one, students crossed the stage. Mandarin, French, Arabic, Spanish, German, Chui, Korean, English, Japanese, Portuguese, Russian, Hindi, Italian, Turkish. 14 languages. The same 14 that once came to her like music when she was a tired girl doing homework under a dim bulb after the market closed. Junwoo stood beside her as the final student, a shy 12-year-old girl whose mother sold tilapia 3 stalls down from where Nye once worked, stepped forward to give the valedictory speech. Her voice shook at first. Then it strengthened. "I used to think languages were for rich people," the girl said. "But teacher Nye told us words belong to anyone willing to work for them." Nye felt Junwoo's hand tighten gently around hers. The girl continued. She said intelligence is a seed. Hard work is the water. And vigilance is the fence that protects it. The courtyard was silent now. Nye's eyes glistened, but she did not cry easily. Life had trained her too well. When the applause rose, it felt like a tide coming in. After the ceremony, students crowded around them. Some asked Junwoo about internships. Others clung to Nye, promising to return as volunteer tutors. One young man lingered. "I got accepted to the International Trade Program," he said, holding out his acceptance letter with trembling pride. "They said my language portfolio stood out." Nye studied the letter carefully as she always did, checking the details, the fine print. Vigilance never left her. "It's legitimate," she confirmed softly. He broke into tears. Junwoo stepped forward, placing a steadying hand on the boy's shoulder. "Make sure you negotiate your scholarship terms properly," he advised. "Send me the contract before you sign anything." The boy nodded rapidly. Business instinct. Protective instinct. They had built both together. Later that evening, when the courtyard emptied and the sunset painted the harbor gold, Nye and Junwoo remained seated on the wooden bench beneath the mango tree she had planted the first year the school opened. "Do you ever regret declining that first car?" he asked lightly. She laughed. "You mean when I insisted on taking the bus because I wanted to stay grounded?" He nodded. "I remember you standing there in the rain," he said. "I thought you were stubborn." "I was. You still are." She leaned against him. "I accepted the car later." "You accepted me later too." She smiled at that. Their love had not been loud. It had unfolded between contracts and crises, near-miss dangers, and careful negotiations. Between nights when threats loomed and mornings when trust deepened. Between coffee she brewed as a cleaner in a company that didn't yet see her, and boardroom decisions where her voice later carried equal weight. He had fallen for her intelligence first. Then her courage. Then the quiet fire that never demanded attention but always commanded respect. The fish market lights flickered on in the distance. Nai watched the silhouettes of women arranging tomorrow's catch. I used to memorize vocabulary while gutting fish, she said softly, repeating phrases in my head so I wouldn't forget them before I got home. And now, he asked. Now I watched them graduate. Junwoo kissed her temple. We didn't just build a company, he said. We built leverage for people who had none. She nodded. Language opened the door, she replied. Hard work kept it open. Vigilance made sure no one closed it again. A group of students ran back into the courtyard, laughing, asking for one last photo. Nai stood. Junwoo followed. They positioned themselves behind the students, not in front. The camera flashed. In that frozen frame were a former cleaner who once corrected a translation that saved millions. A CEO who recognized brilliance when it spoke up. A car once declined, later accepted. A partnership built on respect before romance. A school born from sacrifice. A fish market that never lost its place in her story. Years earlier, Nai had feared poverty would define her. Instead, it disciplined her. She had learned 14 languages. But the most important one had been belief. And now, as the courtyard lights glowed and the harbor wind carried laughter into the evening, Nai understood something simple and unshakable. Success is not the loudest victory. It is the quiet ability to return home and lift others with you. Junwoo squeezed her hand once more. Ready to go home, partner? She looked at the students still celebrating beneath the mango tree. Yes, she said. And together, they walked past the fish market lights toward a future that had begun with nothing but intelligence, hard work, vigilance, and a girl who refused to stay unseen.